Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest on the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, so today's guest is Amir Kirkwood, and he is CEO over at Justice Climate Fund. Today's episode is part of our Milken Conference coverage series where we bring on some of the attendees, some of the guests, the participants, the speakers, and we interview them and kind of get the best of what they're doing and also their experience at the conference. So first thing first, Amir, welcome to the show. Good to have you.
Thank you, Adam. Appreciate you inviting me.
All right. So I know you're at the Milken Conference this year. What, first time, or have you been in the past? Like, what's your connection to the conference?
You know, it was absolutely my first time, and I was invited by the folks
newbie. I love it. New to the community, man. Well, how did it go for you? Talk to me.
You know, it was a really inspiring opportunity for me to see that level of passion and commitment by so many different investors and others around solving some of the urgent challenges, and particularly the ones around sustainability and scaling clean energy and climate solutions. So innovative ideas and approaches that I learned, lots of really wonderful conversations. So I was truly appreciative of the opportunity.
That's awesome. I have a feeling you'll be going back. That's what normally happens. You get hooked, you go there, you meet a bunch of people, then you go back, and then by year 2, 3, 4, your family. So that's gonna be good. And hopefully, I know we didn't get to meet in person this time, but I'm sure I'll see you there next year. So that's awesome.
I look forward to it.
So let's get further into the work that you're up to now. So Justice Climate Fund. Tell us a little bit more about the fund.
So Justice Climate Fund is essentially a investment fund that was created in 2023 for the purposes of scaling and accelerating clean energy financing in low to moderate income communities across America. The way in which we do it is by raising funds from private investors, government, or other sources, and then helping to facilitate that financing largely through a network of community-level banks and loan funds across the country. Your listeners may have heard of the term community development financial institutions. Mm-hmm. Well, those are the type of community-level lenders that we work with. And the idea is that many of them have commitments to do green lending, whether it's distributed energy, net zero buildings, electrification of vehicles. But often what they don't have is the complete form of capital they need to really execute on the pipeline of opportunities. And so what we're doing is working with those community lenders to get them the capital that they need in order to be able to really execute on their mission and strategies and plans.
Let's take that from the investor side of things. Why is it so important for the investor side or the investors out there to start to be thinking at the community or local level? Like, what does that look like? Because I feel like we don't talk about it that much as you kind of propose this. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think the main reason why is that most investors, no matter how large their portfolios, are fundamentally local. If you think about it, a pension fund in the state of California, like CalPERS or CalSTRS, while they manage hundreds of billions of dollars of capital, who are they managing it for? Teachers. They're managing it for state workers who all live in communities and are all faced with the challenges associated with energy costs and clean air and health systems and all the things that focusing on clean energy will ultimately improve. So no matter how big the portfolio, ultimately each of these investors are local.
What drew you to this work yourself? Like a lot of things you can do. What drew you to this work?
So I have a career now 25 plus years in banking. And no matter what I did, whether it was at an investment bank at one point Citigroup to a more impact bank like Amalgamated Bank, all of those experiences led me to understand the importance of financing at the local and community level. Whether it's a school, whether it's working with a church, whether it's working with, residential homes or small businesses, financing is really a local effort. And I just got hooked.
What a story. I want to stick on that investor theme a little bit longer. So especially for the investors, we got a lot of business owners, a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of executives, a lot of investors that listen to this show. And, maybe generally they seek scaled investments and they're looking at a certain thing, but maybe they haven't considered at the local level. So how do investors, generally speaking, make sound investments at the local level?
Well, it's a very fair point. Most investors do seek to generally invest at scale. So for a pension fund or for an institutional wealth manager, doing a $2 million or $1 million local investment is often very hard given their investment policy statements and just the return expectations. So that's why JCF is here to help scale by bringing together lots of lending opportunities at a small level, pooling them into larger transactions So institutional investors can then lend at the scale that's relevant for their strategies, but ultimately drive funding down to very local and community-based lending. So we sit in a sense as the intermediary between their scaled opportunities and what has to be designed for local level investments.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And maybe talk a little bit about the vetting process of what that even looks like on your end, like the internal, like to be that intermediary.
Sure, absolutely. The most exciting thing about having a network of community lenders is those community lenders are great sources of A, pipeline. They understand their communities and they know where the deals are. But two, all of our community lenders are either regulated banking institutions or certified loan funds who are either regulated by entities like the OCC and Federal Reserve. They have credit policies. They have investment policy statements themselves. So any institutional investor looking to work with a Justice Climate Fund and our network already benefit from the fact that they would be partnered with organizations who have disciplined models in which they do their lending and investing. And also, they're willing to put skin in the game. They have their own deposit base. They have their own investor base. So again, it's the best of both worlds because you get the discipline of a regulated entity, but you also get groups that have their own capital to invest. And so therefore, as an institutional investor, you don't have to worry about taking undue risk if somebody who really understands the market is not able to stand beside you.
Yeah. Could you give some examples of like what some deals could look like, just in general, either current ones, past ones, like whatever you can share? Can you give some examples?
Absolutely. So an example would be for a typical community lender to finance a megawatt or 2 or 3 megawatt solar farm or solar installation that might be located on the top of a church, for example, that has a wide flat roof and a carport. So it's the perfect environment for them to install solar panels. And so what the community lender would do would be the one who provides the financing to that church or that institution to do the installation. Now, where they would want to have an institutional investment partner is that often the scale and size to really meet the footprint of that investment might require more than they would be able to individually take on their balance sheet. So the ability to have a co-lender or to have a takeout source of financing really just enables them to execute on a project like that. Another example would be that in the affordable housing world, which is really housing designed to meet the needs of working class families, these are generally large multifamily buildings, 5, 10 stories, 50 to 100 units. So as a result, they have very wide footprints on their roof, and that creates an opportunity to install solar panels as well. And so you get the benefit of a stable asset that has cash flow due to rental income, and then you can directly see the benefits that come from reducing the cost of the energy consumption by adding the solar panels to that building and generating the benefits back. So these are the types of work that community lenders do that are very much aligned with the overall clean energy strategy that benefits communities.
That's great. That's great. And I don't want to assume, like, let's go a step further and look at some of you mentioned you work for impact funds and some other types of funds in the past as well. Like, how does this affect, let's just say, lower income or even working class communities? Like, why is it important to ensure that clean energy investment occurs in those areas as well, like at the community level?
Well, I think the biggest reason why it's so important is that as our country experiences climate shocks, what happens too often is that in the recovery period, the impacts of that climate shock linger longer in low to moderate income communities. Just think about Hurricane Helene last year, which went through the Appalachian region, Western Carolina. They're still dealing with the long-term effects of that hurricane event. And what made it so dramatic is the impact on basic real estate, the residents and homes of people's community, physical infrastructure around them. So low-income communities tend to experience longer impacts over time as a result of climate events. They also tend to, because they're not addressed through retrofitting and other aspects of clean energy financing, are vulnerable to even worse outcomes the next time a cyclical event would happen. Now compare that to where I live in Arlington, Virginia, where it's one of the wealthier income communities in the Mid-Atlantic region. Everyone who owns a property has solar panels on their roofs. And how do they finance that? Through home equity lines of credit. If you're low income, you don't own property, how do you then finance that improvement on your home? And so that's the disparity that we're trying to address at the Justice Climate Fund.
Yeah. Well, this is great. First off, Amir, it's been excellent having you on the show today and learning more about the work that you're doing. If somebody is listening to this or watching this and they want to follow up and they want to connect with you and your team, how do they do that?
That's great, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. The best way to follow up would be justiceclimatefund.org, which is our company's website. All one word, justiceclimatefund.org. On that website, it has contact information to learn more about Justice Climate Fund. And also, if you wanted to make a contribution to some of the philanthropic work that we do, there's a capacity to do that as well.
Perfect. And for everybody watching, just so you know, we'll definitely put the links in the show notes, so you can just click on them and head right on over. And speaking to the audience, if this is your first time with Mission Matters and you haven't done it yet, hit that subscribe or follow button. This is a daily show. Each and every day we're bringing you new content, new ideas, and hopefully new inspiration to help you along the way in your journey as well. So again, hit that subscribe or follow button. And Amir, thanks again for coming on the show.
Adam, I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so much.